And now we cross over to our Soo-young for global insight and an in-depth look at important developments in world affairs.
Thanks very much, Morgan. Now it's time for Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. Well, South Korea on Sunday marked the Day of Trade, and this year, as the nation expects a record number of exports, there was much to celebrate. The number of exports expected to exceed $636 billion according to the Korea International Trade Association. Now, despite the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and various hindrances to global trade, the country's outbound shipments are forecast to grow 24.1% on year in 2021. But can the trade-dependent country keep up its growth momentum? To discuss this today, we invite Soo-young, Professor of Economics at Chung-Ang University, and we also have joining us today James Rooney, Vice Chairman of the Seoul Financial Forum. Very warm welcome to you both, and well, let's begin with you, Professor Song. Now, recent trade numbers show that exports in November for South Korea soared 32.1% from a year earlier, and that's the sharpest rise since August, beating the 27.7% growth seen in some polls. Now, that also marked a 9th consecutive month of double-digit growth, which of course has been largely attributed to semiconductor chips and petrochemicals. Do you see this upward trend continuing for the time being?
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. And I believe the answer, first of all, the answer to your question about the upward trend, I expect it will continue for the time being, as long as actually the outbreak of Omicron would turn out to be some bad omens for the world economy, maybe depending upon whether the severity of the Omicron and the speed of the Omicron's contagion. But however, at least for the time being, the Korean economy has shown, as the data shows, that the huge increase of the export, and for the 9 consecutive month, we have seen that some very strong resilience of the international recovery of the export. And also, but I think this effect actually a little bit exaggerated because of the multiplication effect between the inflation and the soaring price of the exports, and combined together with increased volume. So the trend will continue in at least the first part of the 2022, and so I expect also the world economy also will come back to some normal path to the recovery. I hope so.
Mr. Rooney, well, the numbers do seem pretty optimistic and seem to be set to continue for the time being. I mean, South Korea having ratified the world's largest trade agreement, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership deal. What kind of benefits is RCEP going to bring South Korea once it goes into effect in February?
I think the RCEP is a good initiative, but I don't expect it to have a significant and immediate benefit to Korea. I think the dynamics going on in the world are so extreme that the small benefits that we can expect from the RCEP will kind of get submerged in the noise from all the other things that are going on. I fully agree that there's strength in semiconductors that's benefiting Korea. I also hope that we will see strength in automobiles because of the arrival of new electric vehicles that Korea has some good positions in. But the countries that the RCEP represent are not the largest ones in the world. They are countries that we already do business with, and simply we're going to get benefits at the margin.
And well, Professor Song, there's another massive regional trade deal under discussion, and that's the CPTPP, of course. And now there's long been a lingering discussion over whether South Korea is going to join this mega trade deal. How is the South Korean government actually pursuing this?
Okay, let me start with some background of the emergence of CPTPP against the RCEP. Currently, the worldwide free trade agreement region is divided into four: the NAFTA and the European Union and the RCEP and the CPTPP. So I believe the CPTPP was initiated by the U.S. In order to counterbalance the RCEP. Actually, RCEP has been comprised with the countries, the underdeveloping countries, middle countries, and the highly developed countries. So, to that regard, this could be a very good opportunity for South Korea and to exploit, to connect the trade with some underdeveloped countries and the middle-income countries and the highly developed countries. But CPTPP has some overlapping with some NAFTA and some other types of the free trade agreement, particularly between the Chile and the United States and the U.S. and Mexico. So I believe the U.S. might use this CPTPP as a leverage to impose some favorable agreements for the NAFTA between U.S. and Canada. That's because Canada has been very reluctant to join the CPTPP. But however, right now, the U.S. has not applied yet for the CPTPP. So now the Korea is just a potential applicant for the CPTPP. But however, the China has applied for the to be a member of the CPTPP. So that is, I think, implicitly objected by Japan, and I don't think the U.S. also would like to participate in the CPTPP. So whether we have to wait and see what is the development of the CPTPP in the future. So that's my suggestion.
Sure. And well, geopolitical complications are certainly there surrounding the CPTPP. And Mr. Rooney, well, it's to South Korea's understanding that Japan doesn't want South Korea to be part of it. And of course, the two countries since 2019, they've been caught up in a trade war over some historical issues, and the conflict has indeed hurt both sides. But with South Korea depending heavily on Japanese machinery and equipment for really key items to South Korean trade, including semiconductor chips and electronic devices, what really should be done?
Well, I think what you're touching upon is some very complex issues. Certainly, the history between Japan and Korea has a number of dimensions that could do with significant improvement. And I think politically, Japan has been sort of disturbing the neighborhood to some degree by resisting recognition of some of the historical complications, both between Japan and Korea and between Japan and China. However, I like to say that I don't do politics. I focus on economics and business conditions. And I think, the path through the woods here is to try and be pragmatic about things that are of economic value, whilst continuing to sort of wrestle with the more complex challenges that are, in a sense, social in nature and social and political in nature.
And well, Ms. Rooney, the United States also, that's South Korea's second largest trading partner. While many hope to see the Biden administration remove some of the tariffs or trade actions that the Trump administration had taken previously, but Mr. Biden doesn't seem to be in a rush to undo these Trump-era tariffs or trade actions on items such as steel and aluminium, nor join multilateral deals like the CPTPP. What do you make of this?
Well, again, I'm very much in favor of free trade and of active cooperation economically between countries all around the world. So I would sort of count myself as being disappointed that the new administration hasn't removed some of the unnecessary barriers from its predecessor administration. I think that the U.S. economy actually needs improvement in its terms of trade, and U.S. manufacturers need to be able to source from anywhere in the world at the lowest possible cost. So I think we we have to be frank, a little disappointed in the U.S. administration thus far on this area.
Well, Professor Song, it looks like the United States, Taiwan, many other countries in the European Union, they're all looking to get into the semiconductor business. And well, it's long been said that South Korea needs to diversify its export items, but we still pretty much depend very overwhelmingly on the chip business. What do you think is the way forward?
Yeah, because currently the semiconductor industry, particularly, is real demand is very huge, and so expected to be very large, remain very large demand for the semiconductor because of the digital economy, and the digital technology will be overused in the future. So, considering that situation, I do not worry much about that. But as far as I'm concerned, out of the 15 key elements of the exports from South Korea, the 13 items has shown there's very strong surge on the demand in the worldwide, and the semiconductor and the petrochemicals, particularly the vessels, the shipbuilding has been very prevalent, and we have witnessed almost a 250% increase. The order from out of the Mozambique and the even underdeveloped countries need some kind of those ships, and so I think the diversification of the exports is not should not be limited just to some products, but I think the more important is the rather than diversification of the exporting areas, because actually the European Unions and North Americas and some of the countries in North Africa, they are in need of some high-level, high-quality products. So the South Korean economy would focus on the exporting the high-quality and high value-added products to the world. So that to that regard, I do not much worry about the diversification of the areas, and items are not much in immediate need right now.
Well, Professor Song, it looks like it's been quite a good year for South Korean exporters. But what risks do the ongoing supply chain crisis around the world, the energy crisis, and also Omicron pose to South Korea's exports?
Yeah, as mentioned in the earlier news, and that the LPG gas price, and because we depend too much on some imported oil. So, however, that effect will be diminished because we have already witnessed some declining Western Texas Intermediate future price and worldwide. So, as long as the digitalization of the economy continues, and then the demand of the oil and the LPG would be produced, and with the development of the economically friendly energy, such as the windmill, electricity, and other types of eco-friendly energy, electricity is developed, then that would give some pressure on the price of the oil. So that would turn out to be beneficial to the Korean economy in the future.
And well, Mr. Rooney, while it looks like South Korea's exports have done pretty well, it seems that bringing in investment hasn't been so successful compared to previous years. According to the UN's trade body's 2021 reports on FDI and investments, apparently South Korea's FDI inflow and greenfield investments, they've been on a steady decline since 2018. Why do you think this is, and how do you think this should be addressed?
So I think there are several very important points for us to keep in mind here. And before we move away from it, I'd like to emphasize what was just said about renewable energy. Seoul, Korea needs to actively and aggressively develop its renewable energy sources from solar and wind, because these can replace the oil imports at a very beneficial effect for the country. and we can use those energy sources to power electric vehicles, which are, of course, cleaner as well, and we're a great manufacturer of them. The second thing is that whilst we talk about Korea's exports to the rest of the world, increasingly Korean companies are going and establishing themselves in those other countries. And so we have this effect of Korea actively participating in the larger world economy, but not through the export channel, more through the direct investment channel ourselves. And that, of course, brings back profits to Korea. It brings back value added in a number of ways that are not necessarily easy to track simply by looking at the export numbers. And then thirdly, to address your question, this has been a very difficult several years, 2020 and 2021, in terms of any kind of global travel. So I think, the FDI activity obviously requires people to come and go, for people to examine opportunities. And I think we should not be too surprised with a slump in FDI activity whilst everybody has been going through that and is still sort of reassessing how to come out of it. I don't think we can count on an automatic rebound in next year and the years to come, but I think we should actively pursue that rebound, especially in areas where we are strong. Korea has taken leadership positions in some new technologies that matter very much for the future economy, and I'm thinking particularly, of course, the whole electric vehicle area, where we have world-leading battery makers here in Korea. Is that going to be an opportunity for FDI? We'll have to see. But I think we've got to play to our strengths, and we've got to overcome this sort of COVID limitation by getting back into business on this whole international communications frontier, which obviously FDI depends upon.
Well, we're going to have to end it here, I'm afraid. That was Soo-young, Professor of Economics at Chung-Ang University, and James Rooney, Vice Chairman of the Seoul Financial Forum. Thank you both so much for your insights.